Okay, it's Tuesday, April 3rd. It's been more than a week since my last upload. I mentioned in my last video that I'd be traveling. I went to Florida for the weekend, Easter weekend. The wife's family was down there. My family was actually down there too, visiting other family. We all got together. A bunch of Canadians in Florida. Snowbirds. And the discussion turned to politics. Of course, you get a bunch of Canadians in a room together, and they start talking politics, and they start talking about how Canadian politics are so much better than American politics. My father-in-law and I don't see eye to eye politically. We've actually had a couple of, rather heated conversations in which jimmies were rustled and people got hurt in the sense of, we're emotionally upset about things. And I like to try and have conversations where they can get heated, but people don't become so emotionally invested that they get, angry with the other person. But that's happened a couple of times. So I know to avoid political discussions with my father-in-law. Now he was just disgusted by the election of Donald Trump. He was disgusted by the fact that Trump was running. He'll talk about his American friends and people he plays golf with, people he associates with in the United States when he's down there during the winter months, and how they're all Republicans and they all hate Hillary Clinton. They all can't stand Democrats. And anyway, they fit a stereotype for him, and I don't know if that's because they actually do or it's because that's his perception. But so much of what defines Canadians, it seems, anyway, is that they're not Americans. When you hear a Canadian talk about, Canada and what we have, it's always in contrast to what's going on south of the border. It's always in contrast to what Americans have, or the kind of political spectrum that Americans have, kind of government, society that Americans have. And there's this air of superiority amongst Canadians that we have it better up here. And I'm not so convinced, to be honest. And of course, they'll admit to things that they love about America. The tax rate is lower in terms of sales tax. Of course, they go down there for half the year because the weather's much nicer in Florida, at least in the winter months. But they have a disdain for, the people who live there, the people who call themselves Americans, which is, and maybe it's because, it was a group of Canadians, right? So they felt they were free to talk that way. But the political system in Canada is not better than America. And the society in Canada, I don't think, is better than America either. Our streets are cleaner, maybe. Infrastructure is a little bit more, tidy. At least in big cities, anyway. A little bit more modern in that sense, I guess. Our public transit, that sort of thing. But it's not better. No way. A little bit less crime, but I think that has more to do with population density than anything else. Interesting tidbit. Apparently London, which Canada's much more like Great Britain than it is the United States in the sense of political function. London overtook New York in terms of murder rate for the first time since the 1800s. London doesn't have any guns. Not in civilian hands anyway. And I don't even think the Bobbies carry guns unless there's a situation that arises. So, what does that say about the whole gun control thing? But anyway, back to America and Canada. Yeah, we have less crime. It has to do with population density. It has to do with demographics. It has to do with socioeconomics, for sure. But we are taxed to the teeth. It's insane how much tax we pay here. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And if there's one thing that makes me so angry about Canadian government is that this attitude that taxes are just a foregone conclusion. Taxes are readily accepted by the population as, another tax. There's very few politicians that run on lowering taxes. Conservatives talk a good talk, but Libertarian Party, they seem for, all their likelihood of ever gaining any measure of influence in the political system, they seem genuine in wanting to actually lower taxes and reduce the tax burden. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a libertarian movement in order to see that we're not raped every 2 weeks on our paycheck in terms of payroll taxes, CPP contributions, EI contributions, and that sort of thing. We have a robust social safety net here, and that robust social safety net costs us money. And Canadians, again, in terms of our attitude about these things, they're just sort of, they're things that we do. We just pay for people who can't pay for themselves. That's just part of it. It's just part of living here. When I start talking about taxation being theft to my friends, they look at me like I got lobsters coming out of my ears. They just accept it. This isn't our money anyway. This is the government's money. We are lucky, and we should be grateful that they don't take it all. As that Beatles song said. Taxman. It's insane how much we pay in taxes. When it comes to, I think they've worked out that the average median family, after payroll taxes, property taxes, other income tax, sales taxes, and other contributions made to government bodies, we pay something like 46% of our money that we earn goes to the government in taxes. And that just boggles the mind. When it hits 51%, we're essentially living in a socialist dictatorship whereby the government controls the majority of the means of production and means of consumption. But again, Canadian attitude about it is, that's just the way it is. We live with it. And it's frustrating. And people ask me, would you prefer to live in the United States where you don't know if you're going to be able to get a doctor? I'm like, it's similar here. You don't know if you're going to be able to get a doctor. If you live in a rural community and your doctor retires, you could be waiting years before you find a doctor. At least this is the tales that have been told. Some doctors aren't taking new patients because they're swamped. And there aren't enough new doctors replacing the ones that are retiring. Can you blame them when they can go south of the border and get, twice the income? Again, this is perception. This isn't statistics, right? Statistics may tell a different story. This is the perception that I have. This is the perception that other people have. These are stories I've heard, anecdotes. Any event. Canadians love their taxes. Canadians love... they never admit to it. But they certainly aren't willing to give up their social safety net. And I understand it. I just don't subscribe to it. I don't like our system. I think I've expressed that before. I wish there was a competitive system. I wish there was a a system alongside the government system. People being allowed to opt into a government system or opt out of it if they want to go with a private system, with a private insurer. Doctors being free to service the public how they want to service the public as opposed to under this government monopoly. Anyway. Canadians love their government, and this is the key difference in the attitudes. Canadians tend to view the government as a frustrating but necessary force that is largely good. And it's a caregiver and a protector and a provider, and it's a nanny that makes sure everybody gets a fair share and everybody's treated equitably. Whereas in America, it tends to be, amongst many of the population, the government is a force for evil. The government needs to be kept small and in check. And government doesn't do good, and fails at just about everything it tries to do. And they prefer more freedom to more service, right? They prefer to be more free from their government than serviced by their government. And I tend to agree. And the problem is, though, that in the United States you get all the problems that come along with freedom. It's not pretty. It's messy. You get people doing things that you shake your head at and go, why would you do such a silly thing? You get more crime. You get more gun violence because people are free. And to see people clamoring for less freedom and more security, more safety at the hands of government is just, to people like me and to people in the United States who care about freedom, it's a frightening thing, and it's a worrying thing. I think it's worrisome for Americans to see the youth at the March for Our Lives, clamoring for the government to take away their freedom. And they don't view it that way, the people who are marching. What they're seeing is their country turning into more like Canada, more like Europe. And it's a bad thing, and they shouldn't let it happen. I hope they don't. And I'd like to see the reverse happen here in Canada. I'd like to see, like I said, a libertarian movement. I'd like to see more freedom come to Canada. I'd like to see more people say enough is enough. Government is the source of all our ills here in Canada, or a good chunk of them anyway, and we need to get them off our back. Anyway, I'm at work. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.